Welcome to the regular council meeting for Monday, August 14th, 2023. I'd like to call the meeting to order. All members of council here are present. We acknowledge that this land is the traditional territory of the Three Fires Confederacy of the First Nations, comprised of the Ojibwe, the Ottawa, and the Potawatomi peoples, and of the Huron-Wyandot peoples. We value the significant historical and contemporary contributions of local and regional First Nations and of all the peoples of Turtle Island who have been living and working on the land from time immemorial. Please stand for our national anthem.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command.
Car ton bras s'est porté l'épée, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits.
God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Have no closed meeting report tonight. Any declarations of conflicts of interest from members of council? Councillor McGuire Blaze.
I have a declaration of influence on conflict of interest on 8.2. Although there is an addendum to the agenda, I am listed as the person speaking. I will not be speaking tonight, but this is a committee that I am on. So
Thank you for that, Councillor McGuire Blaze. I'm looking for a mover of the adoption of the published agenda, and we are going to swap out the speaker on 8.2 and put in Rich Tapping, who is here, I think, in place of you. So looking for a mover and a seconder on that. Deputy Mayor Shepley, supported by Councillor Mady, and all in favor of that. And that is carried unanimously. Looking for the mover of the adoption of the regular council meeting minutes for July 17th, 2003, Councillor Hammond, Councillor Verbeek. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor. And that is carried unanimously. Looking for a mover of the special council meeting minutes for July 14th, and that was the tour of our Essex facilities. And that was an awesome day. Councillor Guerin, Councillor Allard, any questions? Seeing none, all in favor. And that is carried unanimously. Special council meeting minutes for July 17th, the Town of Essex, Colchester South Sewage Works Expansion Municipal Class Environmental Assessment. Looking for a mover, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Mady. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor. That is carried unanimously. And special council meeting minutes for July 31st on the site-specific zoning amendments for lands located at 199 Irwin Ave in Essex. Looking for a mover and a seconder. Deputy Mayor Shepley and Councillor Hammond. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor. And that is carried unanimously. We will move to public presentations. We have Dana Williams here, a resident from Stanton Court. And Dana, we move back to our delegation stand, press the mic, and you have 5 minutes to address council and administration. Welcome.
Madam Mayor and council, I'm here today. I am Dana Williams, and I'm a resident of Stanton Court. I have other residents here with me today. There were several other ones that would have been here, but they just couldn't make it, so they have agreed to let me speak on their behalf. And the reason I'm here today is to address the swings at the Stanton Park new build. So to discuss the swings that are intended and the swings that are currently there. Our understanding when it went to vote in June was that there was a new playground being built Unfortunately, when you look at the designs, it was hard to tell what was what as far as the swing sets go. The designs itself obviously look like a blueprint. We weren't sure what we were voting for, but we had a general idea. We didn't know at the time that the swings were going to be removed. There's two sets of swings. There's an infant swing set there, and there's just a regular swing set. These swing sets are used regularly, daily, by kids of all ages. The teens come, they're there. I see adults use them. They're used regularly. They are the primary piece of playground equipment that is used in that park. It wasn't until later, after we voted, that one of our neighbors told us the swings are gone. We had no idea, because we would have probably changed our vote or addressed this sooner before the vote was finalized. I went through all the processes. I had sent emails. I spoke with Madam Mayor about it. I spoke to your Director of Community Services about it in regards to what we can do about it. I do understand that the current swings don't meet code. He was very clear on it. It wasn't just a surface issue. So my concern is, if they don't meet code, why are they still operational? Because our children are still on those swings. So if they're not operational, they don't meet code, does that mean they have to be removed because they're not cordoned off and they're still in use? If there's no plans to put more swings in, because it looks like the design, and it's hard to read the design. It looks like there's only 3 swings, one regular swing, an accessible swing, and an infant swing, which is great, except anybody who's been in a playground with kids knows how well that's going to go over, because my child does not want to go on a swing set and watch her friend swing while she waits in line. She wants to swing with her friends, and so do all the other kids. So they can use the accessible swing as well, but we all know what's going to happen when the accessible swing isn't being used properly. Now the daycare is actually using it regularly as well. So those swings are constantly being used. We understand that there's a plan to put a path in as well, because I'm not sure how the accessibility would work if you don't have a path to get there. I'm concerned that if there's not a path, obviously it doesn't make it that accessible. And then there's the issue of parking. Where is everybody parking to get to this accessible park? Because we're on Stanton Court and you're on a corner. So that's going to be an issue as well. But the bottom line is, the swing removal was a shock to us. We weren't aware of it. So what we're asking is, can new swings be added to the current design? Some sort of redevelopment to add additional swings, keep the current swings as they are until we can develop a plan to get more swings in the future, or fix the current swings. I don't know. So I'm bringing it to you for your consideration to see what you guys think about it, and if it actually can be something we discuss in the future before it actually is built.
Coming to council, any questions, comments from members of council? Or we'll go to Director Morissette first, and then we'll come back to council.
Thank you, Mayor Bondi. So the town of Essex has been replacing old playgrounds in accordance with the 2015 master plan, which states, develop a playground replacement program that identifies and prioritizes replacement of aging playground structures, including locations that do not adhere to the Canadian Standards Association guidelines for creative play structures. The construction of all future creative play structures should vary in design and be barrier-free, in line with Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. So the town records show that the Stanton Park Playground was installed in 1988. Since 1988, changes to playground standards and legislation have been implemented and amended to ensure safety of all the playground users. The town of Essex was looking for ways to increase public consultation with regard to parks. So during the tendering process, this process was amended to allow the public to provide feedback on the design plans that they like. This has been the same process that's been done for the last 4 park designs, and it has been extremely successful. With regard to the swings, a third-party report was done on on May 15th, 2019, and the swings and many other of the other components don't meet the CSA DED 614 standards. Below are some of the important notes from the report specifically related to the swing sets, although there's a number of comments with regard to the other play structures as well. So the swing sets are rated hazards A and B. An A hazard recognizes as having the potential to cause severe injury and or is life-threatening. A B rating is recognized as having the potential to cause or serious or disabling injury. Both of these have a plan of action assessment valued number 2. A number 2 means immediate plan of action is recommended to ensure that repairs, replacement, or removal is completed in a timely and effective manner. So some of the issues that were noted during the inspection is, and again, this is specific to the swings, the energy absorption properties of the protective surfacing exceeded the maximum allowable limits. Loose fill surfacing was found to be compressed and or displaced at high traffic use areas. Loose fill surfacing is notably hardened and or dirt is contaminated. The minimum 1.8 meter protective surfacing, no encroachment, spatial clearance zone is not met. The minimum 2XY protective surfacing zone clearance dimensions for to and fro swing sets are not met. The minimum horizontal seat clearance lateral spacing requirements is not met. Entanglement gaps of less than 1 millimeter were found with S-hook connecting devices. Projections from horizontal plane extends vertically less than 3 millimeters. Sorry for the technicalities of that, but that's what the report was saying. So there are a number of other areas, again, as I mentioned, that the swings don't meet the standard, as well as some of the other playground equipment, which was the reason for the new park design plans and the prioritization of this amongst other parks throughout the municipality. As a final note, the inspector made the comment that as a general commentary summary, it is my personal recommendation that consideration should be given to complete removal and or replacement of the inspected play structures in a timely manner. So administration has been replacing playground equipment throughout the past decade or so, prioritizing what other parks, because a number of other parks had violations as well. So there was a priority sequence where kind of tackling the worst ones first. And since then it's been budgeted along the way. So during the last Hunter Park design plan, there was a number of comments from the public and some members of council that they wanted to look at more accessibility features as part of the design plan. So during that, administration met with a number of different contractors to see what methods could be implemented when we make that design plan. So it's important to realize that when we're looking at design standards for playgrounds, we're not only looking at wheelchair accessibility, because that's where people tend to go right off the get-go is for wheelchairs. But there's also additional features that are included, such as auditory, visual, sensory, mobility, sun and UV protection, implementations for special needs such as autism, learning disabilities, social interactions, and so on. So the park design process prioritized a lot of these accessibility features based on the previous public feedback. And when you have specific features, it may take away from others. So that's potentially where the swing set design was maybe less than what the residents in the area may have liked to see, because the priority was put on some of the accessibility features. So with over 1,200 votes that were cast during the public input process, the design plans with the swings were overwhelmingly supported. Some of the questions that were just asked was, can swings be added? If council directs administration to add swings, we can certainly bring that forward in future budget processes, but we do have to be cognizant that the park isn't made yet. So if we were to add that right at the start, it could cause legality issues with the tendering process. So the recommendation would be to hold off until the playground is in place. And then we could look at if the public feedback is still, the sentiment is still to add more swings. The footprint of any park can always be expanded upon. Can the swings be left? It would certainly not be my recommendation based on the information that I provided to leave those swings. And the other question was, can we fix current swings? And again, the swings are not in a state that they can necessarily be fixed, because some of the violations that are there with the CSA are distance separations from either fence lines or the swings themselves in relation to the poles, the cross poles. So it's not simply a quick and easy fix to be able to do.
That was a lot of good information. Counselor McGuire Blaze.
Thank you through the chair. To Director Morsuit. Our delegate asked if the swings are no good anymore, why weren't they taken away? You said in 2019, we knew that the swings did not meet criteria and they should. Let me back up. They did not meet criteria in 2019. Should we have just removed them in 2019? Should they be in operation right now? Or is this something that we should, like the delegate said, should we remove them immediately? Why are we waiting from 2019 till 2023 to say that there's an issue with the swings?
Thank you. And through you, Mayor Bondi. So it was in priority sequence. So obviously we go through a yearly budget process, and if we were to repair all of the violations at the same time, we'd be looking at a significant amount of money. So it was in priority, and now this is the part where we've gotten to this stage. And now we're looking at the whole design plan to be able to correct all the actions to meet compliance in accordance with the regulations and our master plans that have set that we're looking to make sure we're in compliance with CSA standards.
And to Director Marcy through the chair, if we were to remove these swings, the new park is going in hopefully by the end of the spring 2024, knock on wood. And if all goes right and we can put it in the 2024 budget, what are we looking at for, do we have an idea of how much a swing set costs?
Through you, Mayor Bondi, in order to get the play set there, we would want to obviously maintain a similar theme. So we would want to make sure that the rubber flooring is kind of matching. That's the standard that we've been setting with all of our new parks. So if we were looking to add 4 additional swings with the rubber flooring, based on the footprint that we have, we'd be looking at approximately $40,000 in today's value.
Thanks through you, Mayor. Yeah, so just to piggyback on the comments about the swings not being the code and some of the other park equipment not being the code. So what is the deal with that? Like, I mean, can we just go on infinity and continue using it until we have budget to replace it? Or when we know about that, should we be shutting that type of equipment down? I want to know what the exposure to our insurance is on stuff like that. Like with this information known, if there was to be a serious accident, I mean, I'm very curious as to, you know, if we're exposed at all. You know, if they tell you they need to be replaced, they should tell you they need to be replaced and we should be replacing them. If not, then I'd like to know why it could be 10 years, 15, 20 years. They're no more safer. So Mike, that's one of my concerns. I got some other follow-up questions.
Mayor Bondi, in terms of your second question on insurance, any information on that would go in a closed session for any legal advice, but I'm not sure if you have this first question or I can add something. A lot of playgrounds, I'll use building as an analogy, right? This building, for example, is extremely old and doesn't meet code for accessibility or a lot of things. You can maintain that until there's repairs or renovations that have to happen, then it has to come out of service. So our old swing set, especially Hunter Park, you'd see an old slide that was boarded up because it didn't meet code, so it had to be removed with other features. So that's kind of the standard for playgrounds. If they're out of code, they're still usable once they have to be repaired, renovated, or major gadget goes, then it has to come down.
Yep, through you. Yeah, okay, so yeah, I understand code in respect to that, but code with respect to safety is a totally different topic. So I'll just move off that point for a second. I want to know about the public consultation. If you can walk us through, how'd that work? How much feedback did the residents have in the Stanton Court area? Like, were they aware that, did we just give them drawings and then they had feedback, or were they given feedback and then we designed to what they wanted?
Ronnie, they would have, we had the design plans presented to them and they would be voting on the design plans that were from that point.
Through the mayor, so they didn't have input on what features they wanted for the park. We gave them the features.
Yes, but keep in mind that previous surveys and results, I can't say if they were involved in the request for more accessible components and whatnot. Specific to the neighborhood itself, no, they were not specifically consulted on it.
And then lastly, I guess would be with respect to the swings in particular, with our new design and parks, the Stanton Park design, is it consistent with the other ones that we're doing that are new builds in terms of number of swings, accessible swings, et cetera? And is it also keeping in a similar budget as well?
So the budget for this one was actually $25,000 higher than previous budgets. And the reason for that is inflationary costs over the past couple of years. It's consistent with the swings and the equipment type, but some parks do have a couple more swings than this one would.
Councilor Verbeek.
Through you, Madam Mayor. So for Director Morrison, I get how far along we are with the plans that have been voted on, and been here a minute. So I've seen this play out with quite a few new parks, and fortunately the communities had the opportunity to see several designs and vote on them. I'm all about swings. I have 4 adult swings and 2 baby swings in my yard for my grands. I get the desire for the swings. I'm wondering, Director Morrison, also without clawing back on any of the accessibility features, is there the opportunity to change the design as was voted on to perhaps take out some of the other features and replace them with swings? I want to say that because in all fairness, I know at budget time that everyone around here is, we're trying to stretch the dollars and everybody's pulling for parks in their communities or capital projects in their communities. And looking at a park that already was 25,000 higher than our other new parks, it's going to be hard to come across, for us to agree on buying new swings anytime in the next few years. I'm just sensing that. And so I'm wondering have we missed that boat, Mr. Morissette, or is there an opportunity to pull out 1 or 2 of the other features in the current design and replace it with a couple of swings? Because I can see the battle for the costs all the time at this table. And so coming up afterwards and saying, can we add swings? I don't think there's going to be a big appetite for that.
Thank you. And through you, Mayor Bondi. So the purchase order has been issued, so we can't do that. But even if the purchase order wasn't issued, we would have to cancel the entire project entirely. We can't just pick and choose out of the design plans that are given. There's engineering that goes into those. There's also budgetary requirements that are within those. And being at this point, if we switch out some features, it wouldn't be fair to the other bidders and contractors that were also involved in the process because they were also not given the same opportunity. So that's one thing to keep in mind. But in terms of budgets, one thing that has been done in the past, and I'm not saying that this is necessarily where council wants to direct it, but the dog park in Essex, they wanted some additional amenities put in there, and they had a fundraising community that kind of raised some funds to contribute to having those amenities put within the park. So that might be something of consideration.
Thank you. And through you, Madam Mayor. These swings that are there now, do they interfere with the new park that's going to be built? Do they have to get ripped out in order for the park to be built? Or if we left them there, can that park still be built with the swings in place?
Mayor Bondi, I believe that the footprint would be pretty close based on the design plans. I'd have to relook at them to see exactly, but it was intended right from the get-go that all the equipment was going to be removed from the park to be able to put in the existing or to put in the new stuff.
Any further comments from members of council? To buy some time, I do have a couple questions now. So, Mr. Morissette, what is the order of events now? Like, what is our timeline? Are we getting this done in this year? That's my first question, or next year?
So we did just speak with the contractor, and it looks like unfortunately the timeline is going to be early spring 2024 to be able to do this. With the rubber surfacing going in, what could happen is they could get all the equipment in, but the rubber surfacing needs specific temperatures to be able to bind properly. So in order to do that, we'd be looking at springtime temperatures to make sure that it's going to be compliant.
I'm under the understanding that the contractor is not removing the equipment. We are. And when are we planning on doing that, please?
That is correct. We would be doing the removal, and we would be looking at doing it in conjunction with the project starting. So we wouldn't be taking them down until such time that we know that on-site is done and ready to go, and then we'd be looking at doing that.
Thank you. So I do really like how we do the public picking of our parks. I think it's really good. It's good to get engagement. But I think one of the things that we're missing, and Councillor Guerin kind of was alluding to it, we get to pick from 7 options that are already picked for us. So it's not really the public saying, we want more swings. And I do think that every park that I'm at, the swings are the most popular. I have 2 little girls, and if I'm at a park and there's not 2 belt swings, there's fighting. And it becomes to a point where I don't even want to bring them to the park because they're just fighting over swings. So I understand the community wanting more swings. And I'm glad to see that we're holding off on taking them down until we get more. I've done a little bit of research with this too, and I don't know, but I believe that the pea stones are becoming illegal in 2025. And that's one of the problems is the pea stone base. But talking to different local contractors is you can put like a rubber mulch underneath of it. I'm not sure if we can get another opinion on the swings, maybe keeping the 4 baby swings and putting 2 belt swings there, and then it's just a 4. I don't know. I'd like to see further options, or we look at, like, I would commit to more swings in the budget. I think it's important. I also really like the fundraising idea, and I know that puts some onus back on the community, but maybe we could, rent out one of our facilities like the Shaheen Room. The Dog Pound Committee did it, and they did a really successful job with it. And you just hold a couple pasta fundraisers, you make $5,000, and we're a little bit already there. A lot of times when groups come to council and they have a little bit of money, council will like match it, right? It's like community driven. So looking to see what is the intentions of council at this point. Deputy Mayor Shepley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you. I was going to suggest kind of the same thing. I was wondering if you guys had looked at possibly doing some fundraising, if that was something that would interest the group to maybe help out, especially with us, because we're come budget time. Councillor Beek's correct. It's going to be hard to come up with the extra money. We've got roads, we've got so many things to do, and we're at a stage now where this is kind of set to do. Just wondering if it would be a possibility that you guys would be interested in doing something like that. I think it's a fantastic idea. Mayor Bondi obviously is an expert at fundraising and like yard sales and all kinds of things. So I think she'd be a great help to get to with some ideas.
Question?
To the mayor. I don't think that's an issue. There's neighbors here. We're certainly involved in the community. So a few years ago, so 2017, my husband and I retired from the military and we moved to Stanton Court. And I can tell you that we are a little community within a community. We know each other's kids. We're friends, we're family, we take care of one another. And I have no doubt that if asked to do fundraising, my daughter would probably be all over it. She'd probably set up a lemonade stand. I'm seeing nods from my neighbors, so that's certainly something they would consider.
I'm hearing discussion. Wonder if council has an appetite, as Director Morissette said, is he'll put the numbers together, put in the budget deliberations for capital. And as we've done with other projects, we'll continue to look for funding resources, and there may be some through the community as well. And it gives us a time based on the timelines from Director Morissette.
Yeah, through the mayor. Yeah, I just wanted to, that's why I was asking a question about the budgets that we're doing on our new parks, if they're consistent in that. And I just don't want to get in a situation where we're possibly going to add in a budget X amount of dollars from on a new park and then have 5 other parks coming back that are already in saying we want the same thing. So I think the reason why we're looking at that extra fundraising, we want to help for sure. I mean, swings are a big important part of the park, but again, I mean, at what cost and what are we gonna have to do with the other parks? So that's why I wanted to see that if we were being consistent with the budget. It sounds like we are. So, I mean, I think we need to just look at some other alternatives possibly and see how much is gonna come out and then go from there.
From council to direct Director Morissette to come back with a budget amount for a new set of swings. And we'll bring that, we have your contact, we'll bring that back to the community and see how we can potentially partner in the future, knowing that the swings aren't going to get pulled out just yet. So we might have a little bit of time. So motion from council, Deputy Mayor Shepley, supported by Councillor Verbeek. Everybody knows what the motion is that we're voting on? Members of the audience? Okay, all in favor? And that is carried. Opposed? Okay. Thank you for coming. Moving on to motion to receive the delegation by Dana Williams, resident of Stanton Court. Councillor McGuire Blaze, Deputy Mayor Shepley, any questions to that? All in favor? And thank you again, Dana, and everybody from Stanton Court for coming out. Okay, 8 point next one. Motion for, or just come on up, Rich, back to the delegation booth and turn on the mic.
Hey, Madam Mayor, members of council, thank you very much for having me here today. I'm here representing the Santa Village and Market Committee. And I'm here for 2 things today, twofold. One is to ask for your approval to once again host the Santa Village and Market. This will be the 2nd time we're going to be doing it. And so we're looking for approval to do that. As well as, and importantly, is we want to ask council if they would consider the Santa Village and Market to be an official recognized committee of council, similar to the Essex Fun Fest. And I want to give a little bit of background about the Santa Village. It started a year or so ago where a bunch of us got together and started with some ideas. We're hearing some feedback from the community. What does Essex Center have during Christmas time? We have a good summer festival. Should we have something in the winter? And we got thinking about that, and I have a little bit of a excitement of Christmas in me, and it was something that I wanted to take and got a bunch of people together, and we came up with the Santa Village and Market idea, and make that we want to make that an official winter event. So we'd have an event in July, the Essex Fun Fest, and then one in the winter as well. The background of that, we have some ideas of how that would go, how that would work. And we went with these ideas, and those who had attended seen exactly what we executed on that day last year. We had a record amount of crowd come out, not only for the parade, but also for the event, as it was the first event. So we've seen a lot of people. We were overwhelmed with the response from that. So the success and growth with last year was thanks to many sponsors and businesses that came forward. We operated a balanced budget, didn't cost it, we didn't go in the negatives, we stayed above, and everything was paid for and sponsored by businesses, individuals that came up, and then a lot of in-kind sponsors. We were able to provide all of that entertainment, all the games and everything that you've seen on a $10,000 budget. So we're very proud that we were able to deliver that. And we were able to provide that to the community at that cost, thanks to the sponsors and to the volunteers who helped us with that event. So some current challenges that we have is it's a good thing. We show and there's indications that this event is going to be bigger this year. We created a Facebook page that has been very active and a lot of people have been adding their names to it. We also created a Facebook event page just 4 weeks ago. We already have 3,200 people indicating that they're interested in coming to the event. And it's not even winter or fall yet. We've have over a dozen vendors that contacted us directly. We want to be involved. These are vendors that even were involved last year. We even have food vendors offering. There's a lot of information coming from the community that they want to make this bigger and better. And I think we need to plan accordingly because we need to prepare for a crowd to come in Essex Center on the Saturday of the event as well as the parade. So we have two options. What the committee was going to do, we were going to either go through a nonprofit procedure and set up something that way, or the second option was to approach council for the council to consider a committee of council for this new event in Essex Center. Benefits, enhance locals, the economy, tourism attraction for Essex Center, promoting our heritage. There's a number of things that we like to do with this event. We eventually want to put Essex Center on the as a point in Essex and southwestern Ontario as a Christmas destination. We may start with a small event with a vision of having some small carnival rides, but maybe go into the weekend and eventually working with town and the BIA to make it a big attraction for Essex Center. So in closing, I want to thank all of our members on the committee for making this event. I want to thank the community for coming out, showing their strong support for it. And again, I also want to ask council if they would consider making this a committee of council. And I'm happy to answer any questions from anybody if you have any questions. Thanks.
I have Deputy Mayor Shepley.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. First off, I want to say I attended it last year. It was a fantastic job. I gave you guys lots of credit last year for it too. So looking forward to it this year. I won't be in town, but I'll be there in spirit. Do you have any idea what the cost would be for the town if we were to put this town-sponsored event?
Yeah, so we intend to run the committee the same way as we had, as well as the Essex Fun Fest, where it's zero-based budget. It's what we did last year was when we had a bunch of events and then we had sponsors. We looked for sponsors. As soon as we got a sponsor for an event, boom, we announced the event and this is what's going to happen. And we went that way. What we're asking, what would be beneficial for us, because the struggles that we're going to have with this event becoming so big is the administrative aspect of it in regards to the logistics, helping with the logistics, insurance costs, health requirements, invoicing and receipts, all of which I think the town already has those resources. And we would just if making a committee council would help us access those resources. And it's up to the CAO or whoever to indicate that it would cost more, but I think we'd have the resources here that would provide our committee to make this an event worth executing.
Well, I'm just wondering if Director Morissette would have anything to add, if he has any feelings which way. I know that you guys are the Fun Fest committee. I don't know if there's any costs that we see there, if there's any comparables to this that we should be considering.
Through you, Mayor Bondi. So the Fun Fest is a little bit different in the sense that there's also an admission charge to offset some of the costs, where this event, after speaking with the organizers, it's more of they get the sponsorships in advance and they know their budget going into it, and the money that they receive is what they spend. So from my understanding, is that they wouldn't be able to overspend in those aspects, knowing that that was the case. So the municipality, with any other events as well, we do facilitate and help where we can. So it is in our budgets already to be able to assist with some of these events. So we wouldn't anticipate any additional costs to the municipality with that. And there may be synergies that could also take place with the Fun Fest, being the Fun Fest is also municipal resources. So maybe some of the things that they have in their gathering of items, they might be able to share some of those resources. Maybe some of the contractors, we can work together and create better synergies with both events.
Wayne, I mean, it sounds great. Sounds like the administration's for it. Sounds like, to me, I'm for it. I'll move the motion when it's appropriate.
Thanks through Mayor. Yeah, it's I can see it has a committee of council because a lot of, I mean, it is happening in Essex, it's happening on Essex town-owned property right now. It is only 1 year, so it's in its infancy stages, but I can see it definitely being, you know, everyone, all the other municipalities are doing parades, but this is more than a parade. It's a whole holiday deal. So it's very tough for them to get, I think, sponsorship or even do purchasing without a corporate identity behind them, without a reputable nonprofit name. I mean, when you're just coming up with the deposits would be, you know, you're waiting for a sponsor to pay something so you can commit to something else. So just from that aspect alone, it would be challenging to continue it on without the help of the town and it being a committee of council. Last year, I believe you guys got most of your money for sponsorship. You don't charge anything, and the Fun Fest does charge, but we never charged always. I mean, that was something new back in maybe 2014 or 15. We've seen the need to charge to be able to get the amenities down there and to attract people. So I think there's enough there in sponsorship and vendor space, and I think to do what you guys want to do. I don't know what's involved maybe an administration can let us know if it says, I think it's going to be the resource thing that's probably going to be the major concern. How much resources, how much time is it going to take on staff? So the Fun Fest pays for those staff hours. I love the idea. I think that if there's a way to do it, I think committee of council would be a recommended option for me if we could.
And when the time is right, I think the motion would be to receive the delegate and send a report back to council and draft the terms and references for the committee, just like all of our other committees. Councillor Verbeek.
Sure, through you, Madam Mayor. Thanks, Rich, and the whole committee that put the event on. It was fabulous, and it's only going to get better, I'm sure, with the team. Did I understand clearly, like, as Councillor Guerin was saying, of course, there is cost to the Fun Fest for a lot that the town contributes in the line of, you know, labor and such. I'm just wondering, if I could hear from maybe the CAO, if there's any other input. It sounds very positive from Jake. I don't have I can't find any real negatives unless I'm gonna find out that there's some, you know, significant cost. I mean, what else would we would contribute a secretary and a staff liaison, right, to the committee and things like that. So there would be a small cost, but I'm just wondering, are there any negatives that we're missing? Because I'm just seeing this as a positive all the way around.
Dr. Drusevich, I think, and then if she doesn't fill in all the gaps, we'll hop back to you, CEO.
Through the chair. So just for all of council's knowledge, the way that the Fun Fest budget typically works is they are included in the town's budget. And so you see its own individual cost center under community services, and that would be exactly how we would treat this new town event. So what happens is administration works with the committee of council for the proposed budget to go forward, and then council would adopt that. Fun Fest does have a resolution where any surplus or deficit is transferred into reserve, which helps for future event stabilization. Let me know if I missed anything. Thanks.
I think you're all good. So I think Deputy Mayor, you wanted to make a motion, and we also want to include in that motion that we are moving ahead with this year's event, approval of hosting it this year. Okay, moved by Deputy Mayor Shepley, supported by Councillor Verbeek. Or you want to talk to it? Sure. Sure. Okay, Councillor Guerin wants us to separate them. So we want to move that we want to receive the delegate and ask administration on a report and work with the committee for the terms and references of the new committee. Director Jurcevic.
Post-budget approval for the 2023 event. If you would make that friendly
Sure.
amendment, because the 23 budget's already been adopted.
Okay. Does everybody understand that motion? Colin and then Counselor Garen.
Just looking at it, I know we did tourism grants in the past. We approved one for a Colchester market. Looking when we start making the budget in 2024, would it be possible to put in a grant for this event in that we could give out?
Or CAO suite, maybe because it turns into a committee of council, it wouldn't qualify as a grant then.
To you, Mayor Bonnie, yes, it's kind of the town giving money back to itself. But for any events, same as a Fun Fest, when there's grants by the province, we always apply to get extra funding where we can.
Okay, Counselor Garen.
Through you, Mayor. Were we looking to be committee of council for this year's event, or are we talking about next year's event? Because it's not, we didn't budget for it in 2023, so I'm assuming it's for, I just don't know what the delegate's asking us for.
CAO suite, or is that feasible to pull it off for this year's event? It's August. Director Morissette.
I don't know. Well, it's not gonna work. Just like anything else, we make things work in community services. So if that's what they're looking for, we'll make it happen.
CAO suite.
We'll just add, as this event is some of the Fun Fests, they're planning to be a break even, be minimal cost towards that. So it's more just administrative and creating a committee.
Thanks for you, and I just want to confirm again that it is, Fun Fest is put in the budget, but it's not taxpayer money. And the festival committee is to make whole on the budget. So if in a given year, it makes $1,000, then it goes into a reserve. And if it loses 1,000, it pulls from reserve. And it's been going on for 30 some years. So there happens to be money there to be able to pull back and forth. We're starting out this year would basically be at a zero. So we'd have to make sure if we're going to do it, that it breaks even.
Clarify with the delegate, because maybe it is a good question. Were you asking to be a committee of council for this year's event or going forward? I'm just curious.
Tapping.
For you, Mayor. Yeah, in regards to the struggles that we're going to have, I'm gonna call them struggles. They're good struggles, right? Because we're growing very fast. So in regards to the insurance, in regards to processing the incoming funds and receipts and stuff like that, administratively, we would need that support. Financially, we've already matched what we raised last year right now. So we're already there with that regards to, it's not necessarily the funding, what we would need that support wise, it would be just the administrative part of that.
Then I will. Okay. then-
You, Madam
Counselor
Mayor, just a little bit on that question. If Director Morris says it can be done, and we've also heard from the delegate, the difference it's going to make in the, I mean, I don't want to say the success because it's been a success and we know it's going to be a growing success. But if we can even give it some more leverage by doing this sooner rather than later, and the director says we can, I don't know why we wouldn't.
Through you. Yeah, so I mean, I guess a budget would be the next thing you'd have to tackle with. So how would it work if you were looking for a report to come back from them, or we're just gonna do this? I'm a little confused at the process here.
Mayor Bondi, basically what's proposed on the table is a report would come back from administration with terms of reference, and I'm sounding with also a proposed budget for 2023.
Mayor Shepley, I'm looking for a motion from council at this point.
I just have one question for COC Suite through you, Madam Mayor. how long what would the turnaround be? Could we possibly have this before us again? Would it be possible to have it in September so that we could give them the best chance to have a good event if is that a possibility?
Bonnie, yes, we already have a number of committees, so we can pull terms of reference and that pretty quick on that.
Look for a motion from council. Deputy Mayor Shepley.
The one you just read will be the one I'll put forward. I don't remember the exact wording of it, but if you would like to read it again, that's the motion I'd like to put forward.
So two parts motion. The first motion would be to accept the delegation and ask administration to return with the terms of reference for adding this committee as a committee of council, as well as post-budget approval for the 2023 event.
Okay, looking. Seconder of that motion, Deputy Mayor Shepley, Councillor Verbeek. Any questions to that motion? Seeing none? All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Okay, second.
Second motion will be for council to approve the holding of the 2023 Santa Village Market.
For a mover and a seconder, Councillor Guerin, supported by Councillor Mady. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried unanimously as well. I was supposed to also acknowledge that Councillor Allard wanted me to say he's not wearing earbuds and listening to music. He has hearing aids in. So I'm sorry, Councillor, for missing that. Okay, thank you. Reports from administration, communications 2303. Report a problem update on the second quarter. Looking that for a mover and a seconder that the communications report be received. Deputy Mayor Shepley, supported by Councillor Hammond. Any questions to this report a problem report? Members of council. Councillor McGuire, please.
Thank you through the chair. I don't really have a question in regards to the report, just more if it's possible to get more information from the report of problem. I just find it difficult. I think us as a council, and I don't know if this is the place to bring it up, but I'm going to. If we can see the notes that are happening under report of problems. So a lot of times a member of the community will report the problem and then they'll contact one of us counselors. And they'll say, I reported the problem and I haven't heard back. Sometimes they've only reported the problem an hour ago or even a day ago. It would be nice if us as council could just log into something and take a look and see it, say, okay, we saw you reported the problem Monday at 1 o'clock and it's now with the bylaw enforcement officer. He'll be reaching out to you in the next couple of days. Rather than having to say, okay, I'll look into that for you, us contacting administration getting back to us. I don't think that us as a council should necessarily have to be able to change those reports, but I would like to see it in real time. I don't want to have to wait for 4 or 5 months to get this report to know what's going on with my constituents. I think it could be better. So I'm wondering if that's a possibility.
Councilor McGuire Blaze question, which usually comes from Councilor Garland. We do have an outdated system and we are looking at update it so we can drill down and get more information. So we realize there's some issues with it to get more of those details. Your second part of it, one thing to remember is this is a tool for the residents. It's not really a counselor tool. Where they get that information, there's questions, they should be coming to administration where we can provide that. That's where we've had the report number. We stress that within 3 business days, it's customer service, we'll get back to the resident. So to start, we really encourage that be the message from council, right? We've got to give it 3 business days. If not, I know I received the numbers, other directors get the report a problem number. We'll feed you that report. I just want to make sure we're trying to get the residents to go to the correct place to start to get that information. Going back, once we get new software, and as this is standard across Canada, right? The US report of problems. As the new software comes out, I'm sure there's going to be tools where we can probably get that information. Just where it is now, it's very difficult. So I'm not sure if that may not give you the answer you wanted, but answers your question.
And then Councillor Verbeek.
I mean, my concerns are very similar. sometimes I know, even when, report a problem I filed, I got it resolved and I don't know how it was resolved. In a sense, I don't, and I still see the same issue there on this particular case. So I'm just wondering if, again, I think it would be fantastic if at some point, like you said, in the future, that we could be able to go in and see what's been done or what actions are being taken, more so than just it's a result on the report a problem.
Counselor Meady.
Madam Mayor, and I echo what my fellow counselor said about, like, it would be really great if we could have, and I understand we will improve as it becomes available, but I also do want to acknowledge, like, Counselor Karen and Mayor Bondi, this is big steps. Like, this is a really helpful tool that we have that we didn't have before. And I'm glad that more and more I see every report I see that we're being effective in driving our residents to use it because our numbers are going up. And that's the key, is now we're getting the message out to the people to use it. So now it is time that we kind of like improve on the tool that we have when we can, because definitely more information and being able to find out what was taken to bring the file to resolution would be really helpful, right?
You, Madam Mayor. To echo on that sentiment, I think the reporter problem tool and how our residents are using it is wonderful. It's working and it's becoming better and better. But I would also say that it may be 10% of the cases, the residents want us to be informed. I would love to start giving them the option, even before we have to make new software or anything, just to have the option that if they want to have their counselor, that ward rep, informed on it, that they should be able to add that to their comments, and it should be automatic for us to be informed on those very few that are still happening. It's my thoughts on it. Thanks.
I hear council, like I said, in a new software, there may be new tools. Just need to be careful, right, in terms of where council getting to that operations. We want to make sure it goes to our experts in our departments first. We don't want that to be bypassed either. So I do hear what council's saying, what you're looking for. We don't have it now, but we'll see what comes in the future.
Thanks, you, Mayor. One positive on is the short-term rental, only 4 complaints. Awesome. That's a positive. And the streetscape, actually 15 is not too bad either. So we're doing okay.
The CAO and I talked today about having an annual report of problems so we can see what 2021 looks like versus 2022, 2023, so we can look at common themes. Maybe there's an issue that we're seeing out there with streetlights where we need to target more resources, or down branches. So getting that information, then we can look at overall trends and we can look at budgeting. Deputy Mayor Shepley.
It's going to tie into the next one, so I'll just wait and deal with it on the next one.
Thank you. I don't believe, Councillor Hammond.
Just one question regarding, is there any way that we can tell if a reported problem is like the same, like from multiple reports regarding the same problem? Is there any way that that's illustrated in these charts?
Mayor Bondi, unfortunately, with the current software we're using, we can't, and that's we've noticed that challenge right off. Other municipalities around us, the same issue, so we are looking at new software in future budgets.
Okay, if there's no further comments, we do have a motion on the table to receive the report. All in favor? Or is that a comment? All in favor? Okay, all in favor? Okay, that's carried unanimously. 10.2, building and bylaw enforcement, biannual bylaw enforcement report. Looking for a mover and a seconder that the report be received. And if there is any comments, we can say them after we get a motion. Deputy Mayor Shepley, supported by Councillor Hammond. Any questions to this report or comments? Deputy Mayor Shepley.
Just curious, based on this kind of goes with the reporter problem. So on the weekends with the, obviously if they do the report a problem, there's an infraction. Nobody's gonna get to it for 3 days. After hours, I know we have bylaw that work after hours and weekends now. I don't know what their schedules are. Just wondering if there was any way we could have a way of contacting them if we notice an infraction, even if just council could notify them if we get a complaint so that they can address things as they progress through the weekend or the after hours, because these things do tend to come up, and they tend to come up after hours. That's why we wanted these guys to do the job. So I think it's important that we could maybe have some sort of an answer on how to get in contact with somebody when we see something that needs to be addressed.
Thank you, Mayor Bondi, and through you to Deputy Mayor. The part-time bylaw enforcement officers have flexible hours, so they do work evenings and weekends, especially during festivals or events. They have been provided with a list of those timeframes and those specific weekends. Where there isn't a holiday or an event, the staff do come in during the week as well, so they have that flexibility to work with our full-time staff. The reporter problem function is available 24/7, and our staff, if it's the part-time bylaw enforcement officers or our full-time officers, are able to review those reporter problems as we go. We also have a reporting tool between the bylaw enforcement officers that we share notes. So notes are available on our shared drive and are essentially live. So for example, if our part-time officer receives a reporter problem and they're not on, let's say, the schedule on Monday, our full-time staff will receive the latest and greatest notes. So there is a seamless approach to addressing those problems.
One other question then, if possible, when there is a problem area, do they tend to visit those areas more often than others? Like, do they actually take a focus when they get several complaints in a certain area or ward or section, that they would actually spend a little more time and do more visits? Is there anything update on that?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, there are certainly, especially where there are holiday weekends, there is more presence during the holiday weekend, for example, at Colchester, at the harbor, or near the beach. During special events, they are just at the Fun Fest, for example, had been more presence at the location as well. In terms of certain problem areas, that's hard to answer depending on what the problem would be, but more presence is certainly something that we're aiming for. We have had great success, especially during those holiday long weekends, and having that presence down near the harbor. If we would consider that a problem area, I think it's more just having presence and eyes out there and just informing residents and educating residents on what some of our bylaws are and what some of our limitations may be.
Councillor Mady?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So there are a reporter problem brought in 43, and over phone was still 73. So our reporter problem tool is, like I said, it's working well. And out of that, 10% are maybe. So we're looking at 4 or 5 reporter problems that we'd be looking at getting the information back on. The 73, our staff is doing a wonderful job. I actually started receiving compliments when we brought on the extra bylaw officers about how well our staff is handling the complaints now and how attentive they are to it. So tip my hat, great job from the building department there. The one thing that I would come back to again is that if we look, almost all of our investigations were complaint driven. It would be nice to see a little bit more proactivity, especially around things that would impact safety in the environment. I would like to see those maybe be a little bit more proactive rather than a reactive stance on some of that. Thanks.
Questions, comments from members of council? I really like the proactive enforcement. Another Councillor McGuire Blaze and I were just talking about it because, neighbors have to complain on neighbors, right? But really, it'd be great if town staff are driving around and taking care of it. So it's good. And we just got our part-times up and running, so I'm sure that's going to increase. We do have a motion on the table. And if there's no further questions, all in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Planning 2023-19, the report you've been waiting for. Bylaw amendment to 199 Irwin Avenue, looking for a mover and a seconder, that the planning report be received and that the comprehensive bylaw 2262 be read a first, second, and third time, finally passed on August 14th, and that bylaw 2263 be read a first, second, and third time, finally passed today. Oh, I missed one. I'm sorry. All right. Okay, sorry. I was excited. Can't blame me. Economic development, building a report and development overview for June 2023. Recommended action that we received this. Councilor Verbeek, Councilor McGuire Blaze, any questions on this one? Seeing none, all in favor? Yeah, I was just moving us along. Okay, planning site specific zoning bylaw, 199 Irwin Avenue. Recommended actions that this bylaw be read a first, second, and third time, finally passed August 14th, and that bylaw 2262 and 2263 both be read a first, second, and third time, finally passed today. Looking for a move and a seconder. Deputy Mayor Shepley, Councilor Verbeek. Any questions to this bylaw? You can see the reports. The site plan is amended as per the comments from council and members of the public. I think it looks great. Any further questions, comments from members of council? Seeing none, all in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Congratulations. 10.5 development services, review of residential parking requirements in the zoning bylaw. Recommended actions that we receive the report and that council authorize holding a statutory public meeting to introduce proposed changes to the Town of Essex bylaw. Moved by Deputy Mayor, supported by Councilor Mady and Director Chadwick. You want to go through this?
Thank you, Mayor Bondi. And good evening, Council. Thank you, Abby. So the purpose of this presentation is to provide you with information surrounding parking requirements in the zoning bylaw for various residential land uses. Next slide, please. A bit of background for you. Next slide, please. So stemming from the approval of the site plan agreement for Parnell Street Apartments in McGregor, the past term of council directed administration to review the parking requirements for multi-residential dwelling units, otherwise known as apartments or condominiums, in the town's zoning bylaw. Over the course of the year, town administration then supplemented this review to include parking requirements for single detached, semi-detached, townhome dwellings, and also even additional dwelling units. Next slide, please. As council reviews the information today, we ask you to recall a few of the town's strategic and climate change objectives. In the 2023 to 2027 strategic plan, council has a goal of establishing areas within the town where higher density housing options are encouraged. And you also have a goal to identify areas within the town where the development of mixed use buildings, that being for commercial and residential, should be encouraged. In addition to that, in council's 2021 to 2026 climate change adaptation plan, council has committed to establishing low impact development practices, such as improving hardscape permeability. We've also committed to building and strengthening the town's infrastructure resilience, such as exploring a storm sewer surcharge. And you've also committed to identifying opportunities to reduce urban heat island effect. This occurs when municipalities replace natural land cover with concentrations of pavement, buildings, and other surfaces that absorb and retain heat. Next slide, please. So first off, we're going to review parking requirements for multi-residential dwellings for, as we know, apartment buildings or condominiums. Next slide, please. So the current parking requirements in the town zoning bylaw for apartments and condos is 1.25 spaces per dwelling unit. Of this requirement, 15% must be reserved for visitor parking. In other words, if we were to have a 10-unit apartment, a total of 12 spaces would be required, one of which would need to be dedicated as visitor parking. Similarly, if we had a larger 50-unit apartment or condo, 62 spaces would be required, 9 of which would need to be dedicated as visitor parking. So as you can see, the visitor parking takes away from the tenant parking spaces. Next slide, please. As a part of our review, we decided to look at our neighboring municipalities for comparison. Essex is in the bold text to the left. Amherstburg is the only municipality that requires less than what we do. However, that is currently under review. LaSalle, Leamington, and Tecumseh require 1.5 spaces. However, as you can see, there are no requirements for visitor parking in these municipalities. Next slide, please. So for your consideration, what happens if we were to separate tenant parking requirements from visitor parking requirements? As mentioned, the current requirements are 1.25 spaces per dwelling unit, of which 15% must be reserved. So that's not in addition to, it takes away. If we were to use Weston Apartments as an example, you'll see that a total of 67 parking spaces would be required for 54 dwelling units. This actually only leaves 57 parking spaces for the tenants. Again, that's because we have to take away for visitor. Similarly, for Parnell Street Apartments, 145 parking spaces would be required, or are required rather, but that only leaves 124 spaces for the tenants. And that's 116 dwelling units. So what if we were to change the requirements to separate tenant from visitor? Weston Apartments would then be required to provide 77 parking spaces in total. 67 would be dedicated to the 54 dwelling units alone. Similarly, for Parnell Street Apartments, 166 spaces would be required, 145 of which would be dedicated for the 116 dwelling units alone. So you can see the change, or you can see the difference there. Again, the top being the current requirements and the bottom being a consideration to separate tenant from visitor. Next slide, please. We also considered a scenario that not only separates tenant from visitor, but also looked at the makeup of the actual dwelling units themselves. For example, would a 3-bedroom condo potentially have multiple drivers as opposed to a studio apartment or a 1-bedroom with less drivers? So the top table is the same as the slide before with the current requirements. The bottom table, however, gives us a view of parking requirements by number of bedroom units, by number of bedrooms per unit. As a breakdown, we'll show you in the slide moving forward, 1 parking space per studio or 1-bedroom, 1.5 parking spaces for a 1-bedroom with a den, because that could have, for example, potential of being another bedroom, 1.5 spaces per 2-bedroom, and then 2 spaces for 3-bedroom. Again, this separates the visitor from the tenant. So using the Weston Apartments as an example, which is, by the way, made up of all 2-bedroom units, you'll see that a total of 93 spaces would be required, 81 of which would be dedicated to tenants, and another 12 for visitors. Similarly, actually, as you can see, this option would have required a considerable amount more parking than what's currently required, 93 versus the 67. Similarly, for Parnell Apartments, as another example, which is mostly made up of 1-bedroom units, a total of 148 spaces would be required, which is actually very close to the existing requirement of 145 spaces. So Parnell Apartments is mostly made up of 1-bedroom, but there are 27 units of the 116 that are 2-bedroom. Next slide, please. Next up, we'll review the parking requirements for single detached, semi-detached townhomes, as well as additional dwelling units, which we all know as garden suites, granny flats, or even basement apartments. Next slide, please. So why did we review the parking requirements by dwelling type? This is because the type of dwelling unit may better reflect parking demand and encourages the provision of additional dwelling units in the mix. Next slide, please. The current parking requirements in our zoning bylaw requires 1 parking space per dwelling unit, and that's across the board, regardless of dwelling unit type. We'll get into the reasons why. Next slide, please. So similarly to the multi-res, we also did a review. We took a peek at the parking requirements in our neighboring municipalities. Again, Essex is in bold on the left. As you can see, our neighboring municipalities require more parking spaces on site for the various type of dwelling units than the town of Essex does. For single, detached, and semi-detached homes, all other municipalities require 2 parking spaces per dwelling unit. You'll note that duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, and townhomes have varying requirements for a few of the municipalities, that being 1.5 required space per dwelling unit. As far as ADUs, the OREG, also known as the Ontario regulation, mandates that municipalities cannot require more than 1 parking space per ADU. Next slide, please. I'm going to have Ms. Woods try to use the cursor if we could. And I don't know if it's going to be visible. Looks like it is visible. Okay. So during our review, we discovered a regulation that currently prohibits us from counting or recognizing required parking within something called the required front yard. So yeah, exactly. Yeah, where that cursor is. The required front yard is that space. So what is a required front yard? This means a yard extending across the full width of a lot between the front lot line and the nearest wall of the main building on said lot. So currently, if 1 space is required per dwelling unit, it must be either in a garage or in the portion of the driveway that's closest to the dwelling. We're going to take the cursor close to the dwelling in that space outside that front yard. So it cannot be in, yeah, I was going to say where that dash line is there, that required parking space cannot be below that dotted line. So in other words, if a lot is smaller and let's say the entire front yard is the required front yard, currently we can't recognize a parking space in that portion of the lot. As you'll see in the coming slides, we're recommending a cleanup of this regulation that will allow us to count or recognize the required parking spaces in that area, especially because lots are getting a lot smaller. Next slide, please. So what happens if when we gently intensify our land, reducing the area of our front yards? We ask that council consider the impacts of increasing pavement in the required front yard, thereby reducing landscaped area. Could this impact the aesthetics of neighborhoods? There may be a greater demand on municipal storm sewers. There may even be limitations with snow removal of driveways if the entire front yard is paved and there's nowhere to put the snow, for example. And lastly, increasing the pavement in the front yard adds to the urban heat island effect, again, which occurs when municipalities replace natural land cover with dense concentrations of pavement or other surfaces that absorb and retain heat. Next slide, please. So the next 2 slides are going to summarize administration's recommendations for amending the zoning bylaw for residential parking requirements. Council may direct administration, or it sounds like you already have, to host the statutory public meeting with these same recommendations. You can direct us differently, or if you require further information from us before we host the public statutory meeting, you can always do that as well. Even if we host that public meeting, you can always direct administration to shape the zoning bylaw amendment itself down the road to whatever you wish. Next slide, please. So in summary, for multi-residential dwellings, again, apartments and condos, we recommend that we separate visitor parking from required tenant parking. Again, that's the and clause as opposed to taking away from tenant parking. And secondly, we recommend basing tenant parking requirements on the number of bedrooms in the apartment building or condominium. That is the breakdown there in front of you on the screen. We believe that basing the parking requirement on the number of bedrooms provides a more accurate representation of the number of parking spaces and ultimately is a better use of land and resources. Next slide, please. For single detached, semi-detached townhomes and ADUs, administration recommends that council maintains the current requirements for number of parking spaces at 1 space per dwelling unit. Since municipalities are now mandated to now permit up to 2 ADUs per lot, theoretically, by increasing the number of required spaces for the main dwelling unit, it may hinder the development of ADUs if they cannot meet the parking requirements, especially if lots are getting smaller. However, we do recommend that we recognize parking in the required front yard as required parking spaces. And we also, lastly, in order to protect our permeable landscape surfaces, we recommend allowing additional pavement in the front yard. However, setting landscape minimums for the front yards as follows: a minimum of 30% of landscaped area for lots that are less than 12 meters or approximately 40 feet in width, 40% for a lot width of 12 to 15 meters or 40 to 50 foot lots, and then a minimum of 50%, and again, this is only in the front yard, of landscaping for lot widths greater than 15 meters or larger than 50 foot lots. Next slide, please. So that concludes our information presentation. Again, next steps would be directing us to host a statutory public meeting, and which we all know is a couple months, 3-month process to bring back actual amending bylaws. So this is our first step. Thank you, Mayor Bondi.
Councillor McGuire Blaze, and then Deputy Mayor Shepherd.
Thank you through the chair. I like all of the points. I think it looks really great. The only issue that I have with the presentation and the recommendation is recognizing parking in the required front yard as required parking spaces. Currently, I know that we're not recognizing it, but in our new subdivisions, people are already parking there and parking is still an issue on the street. So I think having that it's just going to create those spaces, legal spaces, if we want to say, but it won't necessarily fix the parking issue. I know in the States, oftentimes in subdivisions like we have behind Canadian Tire, they will do parking lots within the subdivision where they are covered, sheltered parking lots. And I think that that is the way that we're going to need to go if our lots are getting smaller. Our developers are just going to have to provide additional parking in a parking lot within the subdivision. So I personally would like to see that removed if there's appetite for anybody else, because I think that keeping that there, it's just allowing for space that we already have. It's not fixing anything. That space is already there. People are already parking in that space. And now we're just calling it a second space. People already have it. We're not adding or taking away anything by having that there. That's my opinion. But thank you for the report.
Director Chadwick.
Mayor Bondi, through you to Councillor McGuire Blaze. I'd like to bring your attention to the newest subdivision in Essex Center, that being 80 Maidstone. The proposed or the soon-to-be development is said to not include garages, attached garages, meaning that as you may know, the lots are smaller in size. The recognition of a required parking space we would not be able to recognize the required parking in that front yard for developments that are a lot more dense, that have smaller front yards, and that don't even have garages. And so I would encourage you to consider our gentle intensification that development is one example, and we see a potential for so many more, especially under the More Homes Built Faster Act, and especially with more attainable housing coming down the pipes. To my colleague, Ms. Jabour, our manager of planning services, we see a trend in, having these developments coming forward with those smaller lots. In addition to that, additional dwelling units. Let's say one of these developments does meet the required parking. It's not within the required front yard, but the ADU requires one additional parking space. It would not be permitted in that required front yard, thereby potentially turning down that development or that ADU. Rita, was there anything else that we need to add about that?
Mayor Bondi, just want to clarify to Councillor McGuire Blaze, it's correct, your observations, because even though it is a required space, it's only for the purpose of getting that building permit. People can still use that space for parking. So it may or may not really help with the parking situation.
First off, I like the idea of the parking lots added. That's a great idea. Looking at page 9 for the Weston Apartments in general, if we were to follow that option hypothetically right now, they wouldn't, that building beside them that's going up, they would have had to kept that entire lot for parking, and we wouldn't have the 6 additional units going in there. Is that correct? Basically, because there's no way, I can't see how they could ever fit the extra parking with what they have now.
But they also have another piece of property directly behind them that's not developed either. Director Chadwick?
Thank you, Mayor Bondi. It's a great question, Deputy Mayor. So I think in terms of the proposal that would be before us, we would review, and there may be creative solutions. Maybe it's an off-site parking lot, as Councilor McGuire Blaze has indicated. It could be even reducing the number of dwelling units in the complex. It could be underground parking. There are creative solutions that are out there. It doesn't necessarily mean that the development could not occur. It could just mean a different solution to the problem.
Any further comments, Councilor Mady?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I like most of what's in here. I'm really looking forward to the public consultation and hearing what our residents are going to have to say. One question I have to ask is that can we have any separation between an urban and a rural area? Some areas that are considered rural right now that we might be putting up townhomes or multi-use. In an area on the beaches, if we put in something like that, the family needs cars out there. We have no other transportation. We have no way to get to a grocery store or to a school right now. We have nothing. So the family has to have cars, and that means parking spaces. And if we don't, so I can understand wanting to keep one parking space in an urban center where they have more choices, but in a rural sector, we might need 2 parking spaces. So I know I'm going to be asked, is there any way that we can separate those? I'm going to ask now.
Bondi, that's a very good point. And yes, we absolutely can. We currently do that even with our parking area regulations. So in areas outside of the urban settlement areas, you don't have to pave a parking area versus inside Essex Center, Harrow Center, you do for a commercial development or industrial development. So we can certainly consider that as well.
Does our development standards manual allow for permeable parking spaces, like for example, AstroTurf, or something that is like a hybrid that designates this is parking, but still allows the water to flow through?
Through the mayor, yes, there is a section of our development standards manual that speaks to what would call like a low impact development feature. Or an LID feature, which is what something like that would be: the utilization of green spaces, permeable pavements, things like that. However, it doesn't, it's something that could be factored into stormwater management calculations, but wouldn't necessarily affect the parking requirement.
Gerard, I was more thinking of the urban cement everywhere and the heat and seeing if there's concessions. I think if we're going to look at, we want to intensify and we want to have adequate parking to make sure that we're not getting the complaints. We're either going to intensify in our urban areas or we're going to spread out onto our farmland. And I'd rather intensify in our urban areas. But I also want to be cognizant of paving everywhere and seeing if there's alternatives to paving everywhere. Any further questions, comments from members of council? We do have a motion on the table that we will authorize holding a statutory public meeting. Is Director Chadwick, do you need direction on what we want in that public meeting from the options?
Thank you, Mayor Bondi. We can come forward at the public meeting with the recommendations before you. And certainly after the public meeting, we would report back to council with the actual proposed amendments themselves based on public consultation. And you can always direct us after that to either approve or to amend those zoning bylaw amendments. So we can come forward with these as you see, or if even tonight, if you direct us otherwise, we can also change that as well.
For clarification, I think it's a great start and I'm excited to hearing from the public, both our developers and our residents, where they want to land. Any further questions or comments from members of council? Seeing none, all in favor? And that is carried unanimously. We will move to environmental services, drinking water quality management system operational plan for the town of Essex, needing a mover and a seconder, and then Director Gerard will speak to it. Councillor Guerin, supported by Councillor Hammond and their Director Gerard.
So as council learned in your recent statutory standard of care training for municipal drinking water systems, council does have a responsibility for drinking water systems that are in the town. The Safe Water Drinking Act and the Ministry of Environment does require that municipalities create a quality management system called the DWQMS. And that DWQMS includes 21 elements that outline what create a quality management system for the town. So the operational plan that you received is made up of the 21 elements that are required by the MECP. What's important to note is that the quality management system sets out a framework for the operating authority and the owner of the drinking water system that's relevant and appropriate for the system and is legislated under the Safe Water Drinking Act. Its approach emphasizes the importance of proactive and preventative approach to management strategies that identify and manage risks to public health, establishing and documenting management procedures, clearly identifying roles and responsibilities, and continual improvement of your drinking water quality management system. So this is a very important document for the town and council in the operation and quality management system for the town's drinking water quality system. And we're looking for you to commit to that plan and endorse it as part of our operational plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Gerard. Any further comments, questions from members of council? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? And that is carried unanimously. Operations 2023-07, results of the tandem axe plow truck and winter control equipment, looking for a mover and a seconder that the operations report be received and that council reward the request for tender to 401 Truck Source in the amount of $226,000, including non-refundable harmonized sales tax, and that council award the results of the request for proposal to Viking Sives in the amount of $196,000, and council approved the additional $49,000 for capital project Public Works 23006, replacement of the 15-ton dump plow to be funded from Asset Management Reserve. Looking for a mover and a seconder. Councillor Allard and Councillor McGuire, please. Any questions or comments to the report? Deputy Mayor Shepley.
Just the same question you're probably expecting was going to ask. It went up. I didn't read this one. I just read this part, so I didn't actually probably got the answer already and I'm asking him. But it went up $49,000 from the time we put the proposal up.
Through the chair, unfortunately, yes. So we do prepare these budgets in the previous budget year. We do contact these companies, all of the companies to try and gather comparable results to prepare our budget numbers. Some of the things that really play a factor into this is the cost of steel and labor. So there was a time where the town could purchase a truck like this for $250,000 to $300,000. And those days are long gone. So just to outfit, as you can see, just to outfit the tandem plow is almost $200,000 plow equipment. So steel plays the biggest factor in that cost.
Director Gerard, that was, I figured that was probably the answer we were going to get. It just seems like, I didn't know if maybe there were some changes made that it would have jumped that amount. That just seems like it's such a huge jump I'm not sure even a year is a short period of time to jump 50,000 in my opinion, but I understand. Thank you.
Questions or comments from members of council? Councillor Mady and then Councillor McGuire Blaze.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, and reading that, one of the things that stuck out was that the local suppliers who've always been our winter control supplier. Again, this might look like something that maybe we should start looking at opening up the tenders a little bit more and seeing maybe that there is somebody more competitive out there.
So each one of these services are tendered. So we did tender the cab and chassis, which we had the successful supplier be 401 Truck Source. And we also did a request for proposal for the supply of winter control equipment, which the successful proponent was Viking Sieves in the amount of 200,000. So they are actually tendered competitively in accordance with the NFPA.
So let's say council approves this and we go ahead and order it. Do we have an estimated time on when the truck will arrive?
Yeah, through the chair, as indicated in the report, we do have an anticipated delivery of the cab and chassis of spring of 2024 and full delivery of the outfitted truck by spring of 2025. One of the important things to note about this truck is that it's actually the early replacement of a snowplow vehicle to replace the truck that you all got to see at the sewage treatment plant. So this truck is also being funded a portion from environmental services to try and take advantage of some cost saving measures of replacing the truck that we are currently needing to replace at the sewage treatment plant. So there is some benefit and cost here because when we went to look at replacing the dump truck at the sewage treatment plant, we couldn't find anything worth utilizing or safetying for less than $150,000.
Thank you, through the chair. My question would be for Director Jurcevic. We're taking money out of the reserves. How healthy are the reserves? What's this like? It's a big chunk of money. It's almost $50,000. And like, how healthy are our reserves there?
Thank you, through the chair. So the 2022 financials that we saw earlier did report really good returns on our landfill tipping fees that we received from the landfill. So 80% of that is earmarked to go into our asset management plan reserve. So we are above forecast right now for that by approximately in excess of $500,000. So that will help. So we are exceeding the forecast that was presented in 2023, and we'll have additional monies to work with the note that our asset management plan, we are significantly underfunded, right? So we're going to remain underfunded, but our reserve is in line with what was presented at 2023 budget because of the excess tipping fees.
So how long is this truck going to run? Or in other words, how much is it gonna cost us a year?
Gerard? Take your best guess at it.
Or I can't really put together a per cost, or a per year estimate. That is something that, we could certainly put together. What I can say is per our asset management plan, these trucks' life cycle is 15 years. So we plan to replace these trucks every 15 years.
Any further questions, comments from members of council? We do have a motion on the table. Counselor Meady?
Mayor. I was just re-looking it over. I didn't see another name for the RFP ID, just the one. And then out of the two for the cabin chassis, it looks like we're choosing the higher priced one. Is there a reason for that?
The report, Counselor Meady, that the one got disqualified. Director Gerard?
So when we did tender out the cabin chassis, the other proponent couldn't meet the specifications that were identified in the tender. So it's in all likeliness that the cost is lower because it doesn't meet the specification that was tendered. Whereas 401 Truck Source, who did submit and is a successful proponent here, they did provide the specifications of a truck that does meet our specifications and requirements.
Anything further? Any further questions, comments from members of council? Seeing none, all in favor of the report? And that is carried unanimously. Oh, I thought you were voting.
Move on. I missed the mover and seconder for 10.6. In case there wasn't one, can we go back and get a mover and seconder on 10.6?
Sure. 10.6.
That's.
Yeah. Okay, we need a mover and a seconder for 10.6. Does anybody remember who they? Okay. Deputy Mayor Shepley and then Counselor Hammond. Okay. Okay, reports from our youth members. Youth member Smith?
Nothing to report.
Youth member Pine?
Mayor, nothing to report.
Oh man, you guys are supposed to give us something exciting tonight and wake us up a bit. Okay. County Council update, Essex County regular minutes, looking for a mover and a seconder to receive those, and our deputy mayor can move it and give a report. Seconder, Counselor Hammond, Deputy Mayor Shepley.
Report, Madam Mayor, other than I still encourage everybody, if you want to know what the road construction is going on in the county roads, to have a look at the county council webpage. Thank you.
Okay, all in favor? And that is carried. Correspondence to be received. We have all of the correspondence in 13.1 to be received. We're indicated and to share such information with the community using suitable methods of communication. Looking for a mover and a seconder there. Deputy Mayor Shepley, supported by Counselor Hammond. All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. And any members of council wish to pull out any correspondence? I myself would like to pull out 13.1.4, Municipality of Chatham, Kent. We talked about this at County Council and with County Council colleagues, time for changes in the Municipal Freedom of Information and Privacy Act to reduce redundancy and frivolous complaints. So I would like to, I guess, I don't know, like pass the gavel here and make a motion that we support the Municipality of Chatham, Kent.
Mover, moved by, or seconded by Councillor Verbeek. Any questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that carries. I'll turn the gavel back over.
Looking for a mover and a seconder on the committee meeting minutes. Deputy Mayor Shepley, supported by Councillor McGuire Blaze. Any questions or comments to those committee meeting minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? And that is carried unanimously. New business. We did have an item from our Director Jerusevich sent out today, and it is posted on our agenda. Director Jerusevich, if you want to give an update for members of our public, please.
Thank you through the chair. So the resolution in front of you is pertaining to the City of Windsor, who is currently accepting proposals for their 2023 rental housing component funding. It is intended for the creation of affordable housing for qualifying households, meaning that they are eligible or are already on the social housing list wait list or are eligible to be on that wait list. Town administration has been approached by an organization in the town who is interested in applying for this funding. Administration investigated the fund and contacted the County of Essex for direction on such applications. Neighboring municipalities such as the town of Kingsville have supported residents and organizations through this fund in the past. Firstly, through resolutions such as this, and then secondly, through an authorizing bylaw for the individual properties. An initiative like this is a budget-conscious way to support affordable housing. It aligns with both the town's strategic plan and the province's published initiatives. To be considered a qualifying organization, a candidate or organization must meet an overwhelming amount of criteria that is posted in the city's RFP. Some of the important highlights include a not-for-profit, a charitable organization or service group or other similarly established groups. They need to remain affordable for a period of 20 years with criteria that's defined within the RFP. And the one, which is why you're seeing this as new business tonight, is that they must live in a participating municipality. So in order to make the town of Essex a participating municipality, the property taxes for the project and subject property must be set to a rate equivalent to or lower than the single residential rate for the municipality. So currently, this project administration has vouched it, and it would likely fall into the multi-residential tax class, which is 1.1 times the residential rate. So it would mean that there would be a tax write-off required for an application such as this. The difference would not be material because, as I've stated, the rate is set to 1.1 of the residential rate. So I did do a calculation, and on $500,000 worth of assessment, new assessment, council would be looking at a tax waiver or write-off of $488, just to give some perspective. The town does currently budget approximately $15,000 annually for programs such as this, the low income rebate program offered through the county, as well as the charitable organization rebate. And actuals typically remain below this amount. So administration believes the current operational budget would be sufficient for a waiver such as this. Any additional questions? I'd be happy to answer. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Shepley.
Mayor, through you, I think this is an excellent, I read the report. I think it's an excellent way for us to contribute to some affordable housing. The cost is very minimal, I think, and I'll move the motion when it's appropriate. Thank you.
So the deputy mayor is moving the motion that council authorize participation in the City of Windsor to become a qualifying municipality pursuant to the rental housing component known as RHC. Needing a seconder, Councillor Verbeek. Any questions to the motion? Councillor McGuire Blaze.
Thanks through the chair. It's not a question to the motion. It's a question for Director Jerusevich. Is this for new builds or is this for older homes? Is this something like for a new community or is it something on an existing community that they're looking to do?
Just bear with me one sec. I'm just pulling up the criteria. So it can be the conversion of current builds, it can be new construction entirely, and it can be rehab to existing residential builds as well.
Any further questions? Counselor Hammond.
Familiar with this program. Now, if by passing this, this would also entitle other developers to be eligible for this program?
Through the chair to Councillor Hammond, that is correct.
So does the town have any appetite for also promoting this to other developers then? Because I know it hasn't been done in the past and it really hasn't been done very well over the last couple of years.
CEO Sweet, sorry.
On the Councillor Hammond's question, when we received the application from the city of Windsor, we did ask our development service to port it out to all the development community, which they did. So they all have the application if they want to take, but I do believe it is a tight timeline. So that is the challenge and why we had to present that tonight.
One question I guess I should have asked as well is, in the event that they converted it back to regular dwelling and they didn't meet the 20-year criteria, how does the town handle that at that point in time?
Through the chairs. So with the bylaw that we would present to council, if they were infraction of the transfer payment agreement they signed with the city of Windsor, automatically the agreement would become null and void and they would be charged at the appropriate rate. So with potentially retroactive application of taxes as well.
Maguire Blaze.
Thank you, through the chair. So this is an organization is coming, they could have it already the geared to income housing and apply it even further to that. Is that correct? Because this is something we don't currently have. So we don't currently offer any kind of tax break for commercial or for geared to income homes or low income homes. My concern, where I'm going with this, my concern is we have a developer coming in saying they're building geared to income housing or affordable housing, that he's not really building affordable housing. The housing is still unattainable to most. But in today's standards, it's geared in, it's affordable. So how do they define affordable? Like, I don't want to give a tax break to somebody because to a developer, so that way they can put people in there paying $2,000 a month in rent. That's unattainable to the people that we're trying to help. I want to help the people who need the help, and I don't want to give the tax break to somebody who's going to turn around and charge $2,000 a month. So how does this program stop that or prevent that? That's
Councillor Maguire Blaze. So within the RFP, they do have stipulations on, and I'm just going to read it out so that council's aware, that the funded projects have rents that on average for the project are at or below 80% of the current Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation average market rent. So they do define that it must be below 80% of that. They also define that they, there's two streams of funding. So basically, to describe it, City of Windsor is the service manager. They can choose two different streams of funding. So that was under the OPHI funding. That's the 80% threshold. The other stream of funding, rents are set at 30% of household income or at shelter cost with tenants that are on or eligible to be on the Central Housing Registry waitlist. So there is strict criteria on income thresholds for tenants that are going to reside in these, and they must meet that threshold for 20 years.
This is something that we've talked about at the county as well, and some of the language in the agreements and the bylaws in the county municipalities wasn't favoring getting development or more affordable development. And if we don't do it, then we risk losing that investment into our housing stock. So it's something that I really support. We did talk about it. The City of Windsor is starting to open the door and work better with the county in terms of sharing the money that they get, because the city is the manager of all of the housing, all the social service housing, all the geared to income housing. So the fact that they're saying, hey, change your paperwork and more of our places can apply, I think is really good for our residents. Anything further? All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. It has been also brought to my attention that Councillor Verbeek has a new business item that is minor and urgent she would like to bring up tonight. Councillor Verbeek?
Thanks. Through you, Madam Mayor. Bear with me, my allergies are kicking in right now. It's a minor issue because it's just a letter. I'm requesting council to support that we send a letter, and urgent because it's time sensitive. It's reflective of what many of the municipalities are going into budget deliberations. So as you well know, we share Coan Park with Amherstburg. And so I guess my request tonight is that we just send a letter to Amherstburg asking them to keep in their budget deliberations to set aside some money for a big expenditure for the actual playground equipment at Coan in their 2024 budget. I appreciate some direction from CAO Sweet, the mayor, and Director Malandrucolo, because I was headed to a notice of motion. Instead, I'm going to put forward this motion, and hopefully I'll get a seconder and we can discuss or vote on it. That council direct administration to send a letter to the town of Amherstburg requesting that they include funds in their 2024 capital budget for a major capital expenditure at Coan Park as per the results of the Coan master plan. That being said, we have some in reserves we just need them to plan ahead in their 2024 budget to be able to match us so that we can move forward with this playground structure finally.
Looking for a seconder on that, Councillor Allard. And I think it's a really good motion. I think it's timely. All of us are doing our budgets, and if we don't get a little letter to them now, we could miss out on 2024, where if we send it, we could have a hope that we get something there at 2024 since we've got all our money saved. Any further questions, comments on the motion? Deputy Mayor Shepley?
Great idea. I'll support sending the letter. I mean, we asked the residents to have a fundraiser. It's only fair we ask Amherstburg to contribute as well. Thanks.
Further questions to the motion? All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. No notice of motions tonight. Reports from council members. Councillor Mady.
Nothing to report tonight.
Way.
Thank you through the chair. I had it up here and it closed on me. I just wanted to let everybody know who's listening or watching that there is a new farmers market in Essex Center that happens on Monday nights. So Monday nights between 4 and 8 p.m. until September the 28th at 276 Talbot Street South. So that's at the Essex Community Gardens. It's that organization who's doing this farmers market, and it's I can't remember the name of the church there, but it's in the church at 276 Talbot Street South. So if you are interested, they have vendors and they're selling some of their growing fruits and veggies. I don't know what they have to offer, but go out and support the local farmers market so we can continue that great endeavor.
Thank you, Chair. I have one thing. We have a new selfie frame down at the harbor in Colchester. It was made through Christy Lister and David Creed. It's right down the walkway. You take a picture of the frame, and the background is the lake behind you. That's it.
Just a plug for the Steam and Engine Steam and Engine Museum had their parade and a whole weekend of great events. And I was there today, just, checking in on the success of the event. And they had really, really good numbers on the Saturday, dropped off a little bit on the Sunday, but it was again, a good event put on by some really committed volunteers and great job.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, nothing major to report. We will be going to AMO next week. Me and many of our colleagues are on the table here. It should be an exciting week. I'm looking forward to it.
Want to encourage residents to check out our budget process that we have online and on Facebook. It's where you get to pick priorities yourself. So help us help you and tell us what priorities are really important for you. It's on the essex.ca and click share your input. I also want to encourage you to clean out your kids' closets. I'm doing kids' clothing swap at the Essex Youth Center this Saturday. You could really use some more kids' clothes. So if you haven't cleaned out your kids' closets yet, you can please do that and drop your clothes off at the Essex Youth Center. Okay, Councillor Hammond, no, you changed your mind now, eh?
God, I'm not gonna be here next week, and we have the Harrow Fair coming up at the end of the month, so everybody make sure you got time planned to go visit the Harrow Fair. It's always a fun time.
Bylaws. Bylaw that require a third and final reading, bylaw 2259 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the July 17th regular council meeting. Moved by and supported by Councillor McGuire Blaze, Deputy Mayor Shepley. Any questions? All in favor? That's carried. Bylaw 2259. Hang on one sec. 2225. This is like confusing. Being a bylaw to establish and maintain reserve and reserve funds. Being a bylaw to be read a third and finally passed on August 14th. Deputy Mayor Shepley, supported by Councillor Guerin. Any questions? All in favor? And that is carried. Bylaws requiring a first, second, and third and final reading. Bylaw 2265. Being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a lease agreement between the corporation, the town of Essex, and Quinlan Inc. for leasing vacant land for the purposes of farming. To be read first, second, and third time finally passed today. Councillor Verbeek, supported by Deputy Mayor Shepley. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor, and that's carried. Bylaws require a first and second reading. Bylaw 2266 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the August 14th regular council meeting. Needing a mover and a seconder. Councillor Hammond, Councillor Allard, any questions? All in favor? Motion to adjourn. Councillor McGuire Blaze, Deputy Mayor Shepley, all in favor?